So ultimately, I was locked up for 36 months. I was on home arrest for 4 months, and then I was at the halfway house for 20 days before Trump pardoned me. I can talk about what happened at the arrest and then everything that happened through the rest. Okay, so I texted there here, and as I said, she didn't believe it because I'm a little bit of a prankster, so it wouldn't be beyond me to just do that and have it not happen. But this was a serious situation, so I definitely wouldn't have joked about it in the first place. I moved the blinds up, and I could see all the red lights from all the cars. There was 25 agents out there with their weapons. Laser dots were on me as I was told to come out of the house, which they had used a battering ram on the door and knocked the door out of jam. It cost $5,000 to have the repairs done to the door. They knew who I was. They knew where I worked. They knew what I drove. They knew my phone number. They knew everything. Yet they chose to do that. They knew that I was not a threat, but nonetheless, they did it.
Did they call the media to come and film it?
Yeah. There was a photographer there. There were also drones flying in the air to capture it for their purposes. I get pulled out in my boxers and t-shirt because that's what I was sleeping in. And I had to step across broken glass in my bare feet. And I'm pulled out to the front yard and then cuffed. And I'm standing in the front yard. It's like almost 6:30 in the morning. It's summertime, so it's already light out, and cars are driving by, and I'm there, on display essentially. And one of the funny things is that night I slept in a particular shirt, and it was a shirt that said "Proud to be a deplorable," of all things. And I'm out front, and then the crime scene investigation van pulls up, and then the pop-up tent comes out. And then the little hairnets go on, and then the booties go on, and then they're shuffling in gloves, and then they're shuffling in and out of the house, pulling stuff, just making the show. It was a production, and that production was meant to say
the crime, if you did anything that they were charging you with, took place months ago on the other side of the country.
Right. But see, they had to put on a show for everyone else. The show was not necessarily for me. It was to let everyone else know and get out into the news. If you decide to stand up and say anything, this is what's going to happen to you. So you better not do it. So, and it was really effective if you think about it, because it really cooled a lot of the MAGA movement at that point. So a lot of people were frightened. So they were masterful at what they did. They did a fantastic job how they pulled it off and how they tried to make it something amazing. But ultimately, the people are seeing through it now. So I'm in the front yard in cuffs, and the cops are kind of joking about what they're doing this next weekend. It's like, hey, where you going? Oh, because it was Labor Day weekend. It was coming up. I'm going up to Pismo Beach. I'm gonna go riding motorcycles and stuff with the kids. And they were shooting the shit like it was just any other day. Did not like what they were doing. Didn't mean anything to them. There was nothing behind it whatsoever. And I just looked up at them, and it was some of the only words I said to them. I said, "You guys should be ashamed of yourself, because here you are, busting down my door, pulling me out, doing all of this for what?" They're talking and going about all their business. I'm just there in cuffs, and I overhear one of them talk about a suicide bomber, and that it was over in Afghanistan, because the month of August was that withdrawal that got totally screwed up, and those service members got killed. Well, I didn't know exactly the details of it at the time, but I just put in the back of my mind. They took me down to hook me in, the marshals did, and then I had an appearance with a magistrate later on that day. And that magistrate actually read the charges and then decided to cut me loose, like say, let me out. And the government objected to that, but fortunately it was already 4:00 West Coast time, so the courts were closed, East Coast, So they couldn't file any motions that they wanted to regarding having my bond revoked and not being able to secure a bond. And the judge said, well, if you don't have the paperwork already ready to go, I'm letting him out. So they did. And she let me out with the conditions that I had a $100K bond, that I wore an ankle monitor, and that I be on curfew. And I left the courthouse without posting the $100K bond. I did that like 2 days later. Like, it wasn't even a rush. It was weird. I mean, they did put an ankle monitor on me right then, but I left. And then during the preceding 12 days, the government, they appealed my release and had my bond revoked. But during that time frame, I came into a better understanding of that suicide bomber that the cops were talking about. And it was the 13 service members that were killed at Abbey Gate. And so I'd already been arrested, been released, realized that the government's appealing my bond, so they're probably going to win. I'm probably going to get revoked. And I already know that I'm going to go to the gulag because I've been listening, because I know they've been watching. And so I know where I'm headed. Want to get a little bit of inspiration. I knew they were going to be able to take everything away from me. So I thought, well, if I get a tattoo, it's something they can't take away from me. So what I ended up doing is getting the names of the Abbey Gate heroes that died that day tattooed to my arm, because I knew where I was going. It's like, if I ever get in a condition where I'm feeling sorry for myself or something, I could look down at this, and this is a reminder of these kids that lost their lives. The reason that I built this affinity to them was because, one, it happened on the same day that I was arrested. But the reason I was arrested ultimately was about how these kids got killed, because they got killed because of a stolen election. Because if President Trump had been in office, that wouldn't have happened, and they would still be alive. So that's how that connection came to me.
That's powerful.
So I got that on there, and then there were times when it was pretty dark, things that were going on, and I could just look at this and go, "You got this. It's no big deal, dude. These kids are dead. You're alive. You still got it." So.
Did you ever think about going to the news media and publicizing what they were doing to you, to try to embarrass them for trying to do this, poisoning the jury pool?
So the time between I got arrested and got out that day, and then the time it was revoked was 12 days. So during that time frame, my time was mostly focused on finding a lawyer. Well, and I was under conditions. I had a curfew that I had to deal with, I had an ankle monitor, that kind of stuff. So I wasn't necessarily focused on that, and I really didn't think it would have been effective anyway, just following the news, knowing that they would just make something out of it, of course. And actually, to this day, I haven't read any of the news articles that have been written about me. Like, even later on when I had an opportunity to, I still haven't. So, because it doesn't matter, because it's all BS.
Did anybody else try that you met?
Yeah. Some people did, but it made a difference for absolutely no one, because the media was 100% controlled. That we had at that point. That think about how hard they were coming after J6 at that point. The media was just absolutely killing us, and there was no one else who would stand behind us. So everyone treated us as toxic, which is why it was so difficult to find a lawyer. You would think, oh, sure, anyone can hire a lawyer. Well, it was very difficult to find a lawyer, because lawyers were afraid, because they heard of other lawyers being attacked and doxxed and disbarred, or complaints to the bar, all that kind of stuff.
All the lawyers, this is something I found out recently, all the lawyers are in the same club. It's called the British Accreditation Registry. They answer to the crown. They actually have titles of nobility. That's why they call them esquires. And they're actually not eligible to serve in Congress based on the original 13th Amendment that they replaced with the Slavery Amendment, because they wanted to have all their British Accreditation Registry bar members, BAR, British Accreditation Registry members, doing that. And it's not in their best interest to defend you. It's in their best interest to go along and make it look like they're defending you.
Exactly.
While they milk you for money. And once you go past that little gate, you are in their theater, if you will. and they have
Mhm.
different parts in the play, and you don't have a part. You're dead. Because you're
Right.
considered dead. That's why you have to hire a power of attorney to represent you in that theater because you're not allowed to talk because you're dead. So that's why I always represent myself. But you know that, and that you do what you're told to do, and if you act as your own attorney, you've got a fool for a client, is what they always tell you. But gosh, did you get a good one?
I got a milk toast lawyer. He was recommended by by someone who was, I consider good. He navigated me through the process. I guess is the best way to
Yeah,
put
he
it.
was trafficking you.
Right. So the options were, you either get a lawyer who's from DC, an insider there, if you will, or you get an outsider. Not, and in either case, it's not. It wasn't good for us because if you had the insider, well, you know why. If you had the outsider, he's going to come in and try and show the insiders what it's all about, and then we know who the jury is too because they voted 95% Democratic in the last election. So it was
Plus, it's the foreign district of Columbia.
yeah.
It's not part of the United States.
Right. I mean, I
It,
was good. I was going to take it all the way to trial for sure. I was not going to plead guilty to anything, and I knew I was going to get convicted. Although I had a slimmer hope that, like, you know what, I might find that one because I only need one to hold out. As things progress, that never occurred.
oh wow! Did you ever think about firing your lawyer and act as your own attorney?
I did, yeah, because there was two phases. There was pre-trial and then trial. So I had a point where it was leading up to the trial. I almost did, but I decided to stick with him. And at the end of the day, it wouldn't have mattered what I did. I mean, I literally could have represented myself, and the same thing would have occurred. Or if I had paid,
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have had to pay the lawyer. There is that.
you are correct. But the funny thing is I had a paid attorney for trial. But then when it came to my appeal, I went with a public defender because
Good.
there was no way I was going to throw more money at an appeal that's going to be appealed by the same judges that I just sat through. So it's the same district. It's not nothing's going to change. So there's no point. And I knew too, based on my sentencing time, that I would be out before anything of appeal would have been taken effect to lessen my sentence. Um, so that's why I said, forget it. I'm not putting another dime in this. I'm riding this out, however it plays out.
I acted as my own attorney a couple of times in my life. Like when I got divorced, I I quickly learned, and my ex-husband agreed with me, that we hated lawyers more than we hated each other. And so I act as my own attorney. And here's the fun thing about it. If you ever know anybody who gets into this problem, and I told a friend of mine who lives in California who's friends with the person who introduced me to you. And my other friend had a problem with a crooked business partner, and it was going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars to hire an attorney to fight them and
Right.
get their money back. I said, here's the deal. You act as your own attorney, and they have to turn over all the evidence to you. They can't
Hmm.
talk on the phone about their golf game and then charge
Right.
extra money.
Right.
And,
Right.
and it really puts them on notice, and they really it upsets their entire play because it's a play.
Hmm.
They have costumes. The judge has a costume, and he goes into his death chambers, and they're dealing in cargo. It's administrative cargo. They're administrating moving cargo. You're just the cargo. And it's human trafficking. It's awful. Yeah, and she's been doing it, and they've actually won a lot of money. I believe they've been partially restored. The son has really taken it on and learned about the law. And every time the judge gets flustered with the situation and says, "Why don't you hire an attorney?" You know what their
Uh-huh.
answer is? Well, they took all our money. We don't have enough money to hire an attorney.
Uh-huh. Then what are you going to
Right?
do?
Isn't that great? But we're all told we have to hire an attorney. Either
Uh-huh.
you hire an attorney or one will be assigned to you. You can well. The reason they have to assign somebody to you is they need somebody in that position to act as your advocate because you're a dead person and your dead person can't talk in the court. And
Uh-huh.
it's just such a nightmare. But okay, so you went through they took you back. How soon after they revoked your bond did you go to DC for the trial?
So I had to do a self surrender after Labor Day, and then at that point, I spent about 3 weeks in the Santa Ana jail here, and then I was taken from here to Oklahoma via Con Air. So they took us in a it seemed like a dog catcher car, quite frankly, just a steel metal. Sat in the back of this thing, and this is the middle of September in California, so it's hot as whatever. And we're driving, and we actually drive out to an area that's called the Inland Empire, which is more desert than California is. And we're in the back of this thing, and it took almost 3.5 hours before we even got out of it. I mean, we're all just completely drenched with sweat and stuff like that. But then we get on an airplane called Con Air, shackled ankles and wrists to Oklahoma. And in Oklahoma, there's a transfer facility there. It's kind of like the way FedEx used to work. All the packages at FedEx used to go to one place, and then they get dispersed out to other places, right? Well, that's what
like
that's
a hub for packages.
The hub, yeah.
See, in your package
there, I was landed in Oklahoma City. Was taken to a place called Grady County, and this place, I'm telling you, was like out of some alien space movie jail. It was you couldn't believe that this place had a contract to house anybody. Grady County Jail, yeah. So basically what happens is the feds have prisons, but they don't have jails. So when you're pre-trial, you're in jails. You're not in prison, you're actually in jails. And so the feds don't really have jails, so they contract out. So sometimes they'll contract out to a county.
Oh, the private jails, the private prisons.
Sometimes they'll contract out to private, right? So you're in different facilities. So it's never the same. They never have the same commissary. They never have the same menu. They never have the same phone system. So every time you make a bounce, you've got to reestablish all that stuff. And in the process is part of the punishment too. It's like, you put money on the phones here, and then you never really know when you're going to be moved again, because they never give you notice. It's just like they knock on your cell and pack your shit, and you got to go. So you never know. So now all of a sudden you're lifted out. You don't have time to call anyone in your people, because they don't want you. They move you without telling you for a reason. They don't want you to call your people so that they can come and follow you or do something like that on the road, break you out, whatever it is. So you never know. So now you're leaving, and your people don't know that you're leaving. And so however long
you have a right to call your lawyer?
No, not when you're in transit. Nope, you can get that when you get there. And so you don't have that ability to do that. So you have to, however long it takes to get this new facility, and then you get booked in all over again. Every time you go to a new place, you get rebooked in, and then they'll send you to, whether it's a dorm or a cell or what have you, and then you got to start all over again. You got to figure out how to use the phone system. You have to prepay, or it's just a whole nightmare process. But anyway, so this place in Grady was crazy. I was there for about I want to say maybe 2 weeks thereabouts. Jail food sucks. Period. Straight up. There's no good jail food. When you get to prison, it's like a bad cafeteria. So there's some days when it's okay. It's just, but it's not as bad. Once you get down the road to prison, then it's better.
So you're there in Grady. I'm from Oklahoma, so I remember having to memorize all the counties.
Yeah, it's south of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
They have a big transfer facility right on the airport, but I didn't stay in that one. So there's either that one that's on the airport, and then there's another one a short distance away. But I got sent to this one in Grady. It's like about 45-minute crazy bus ride.
Was there any other J6ers at that jail?
No. So there were none in Santa Ana. I was the only one in Santa Ana, and then there was none at Grady until I didn't meet them. At least they weren't in my pod until I left. So when they called me out to leave Grady County, they typically throw you in a holding cell with a bunch of guys, because they have to process everyone's paperwork, and then everyone has to get cuffed up, and then you have to leave. So it was during that time we were in that holding cell that I saw a couple other. I met 2 other J6ers at that point. So they were the first ones that I'd actually met in real life, because I hadn't met any since I've been arrested.
What states were they from? Do you have any idea?
One of them was from Tennessee, and the other one was from Texas. get put on a plane and sent to D.C. We fly in Pennsylvania. It was one of the cities in Pennsylvania. I can't remember the name. Anyway, it was about a hour and a half bus. At this point, now we're in a minivan. So you're in a minivan, cuffed up. You're still cuffed, at feet and wrists. And it was about an hour and a half minivan ride to get to the DC jail. And then I get booked in there, and then immediately we go into quarantine period because this is during COVID. So, and that was the other thing that just made this whole process just even worse, because every place you went, they had some sort of COVID protocol, and it was varied from one to the next, but you were always subject to it as soon as you got there. And sometimes they kept it that way the whole time too. So went into it was a 17 days. So at that point, we were doing what was called a 23-1. So you're 23 hours in the cell, you get 1 hour out, and during that hour you get to shower. You shower and make your phone call. So that was for 17 days, and then at that point they transferred us J6ers over to a different part of the jail where they had a whole pod set up where we were housed at that point. When I got there, I was like about number 22, 23, something like that.
So this is the gulag in DC that everybody talks about, where they don't give you clean water and stuff like that?
Yeah. So the cells,
What a night.
the first cell I was only in it for like, I don't know, a day or two, until enough complaining that they came around and shut that cell down because of the black mold and stuff in the water, that I had to go to another one. And then that process happened all the time.
What do you mean black mold?
Black mold in all the fixtures, the mold that happens.
Black mold's really dangerous.
I know, and I was just in a bunch of it yesterday for another reason. It had to deal with water damage stuff. But yeah, so it was it's not good.
So are you okay? Do you have any health problems from this experience? Water, the mold?
I don't think so.
As he coughs.
Just kidding. So I spent, let's see, from September, October, November, December, January, almost 8 months in DC. When I ended up leaving there, I didn't actually know the reason why I was leaving. So I received a call to go down to medical, and it's not out of the ordinary that happens. I thought that I was going to be renewed for vitamins that I wanted or something like that. But when I got down there, they immediately threw me in this holding cell, which they'd never done before when I went to medical. So anything out of the ordinary, you take a special notice of, because everything is very structured. So things happen in a certain way. So when things don't happen a certain way, it's like you like look out for what's going on. So all of a sudden I realize things, they're locking me in this room, so something's up. Then I get thrown in the hole, and I stay a week down there. So the hole is jail in jail. It's the jail inside of the jail. So when you go to the hole, it's like something has happened, and it could
like
be
in those prisoner of war camps movies where they say he's in the hole and you're in solitary confinement.
Yeah, it's solitary confinement, and then I'm down there, and I don't even know why I'm there. So for a week I'm down there, and finally some marshals come down and they take me out, because again I had no idea I was leaving, but now all of a sudden now I'm on the move again. And as I go out, they take me outside, and these marshals, and they start to question me a little bit, and they say, "Hey, does anyone in there want to hurt you?" And I'm like, "No," because I mean we all got along. I mean, considering the circumstances with that many dudes in one place that kind of have some commonality, we got along really well. I mean, there was a couple fights, but and I know because of all the other places that I've been, how often there is a fight. I mean, it was crazy. There was like months when there was never a fight. When I say fight, it wasn't. It's very
like
rarely
people raise their voice or something.
Yeah, exactly. So it was completely different. And this had to have been a total mind melt on these cops, because they're sitting here trying to punish us, do everything they can, and we're still not acting out the way they do on the other side of the prison, or the jail rather. So any guards that got to look over us had it super easy, but yet they were still total ales. But anyway, so I'm out of the car talking to these agents, and they said, "You know, we're going to hurt you." I said, "No, we're all friends. Like, does anyone have anything against you?" I'm like, "No, I know everyone. Everything's fine." They said, "Do you know the address to the judges in town?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I don't know the addresses, but I mean, I know my judge's name." And they said, "Well, do you have access to any white powder?" And I'm thinking to myself, that's really weird. And at the same time, I'm putting two and two together, and I'm saying, okay, they're talking about addresses to the judges, and they're talking about white powder. Remember what happened after 9/11?
Ricin or ricin.
Yeah, or whatever, right? Being sent to the judges. Well, ultimately, what turned out is someone had gotten some of our names, a prisoner in the other side of the jail had gotten our names and was sending out mail with my name on the return address with white powder to the judges.
No way.
I mean,
That was
think about
framed. That I don't think I bet you the police did
well
it.
here. So
They're
well
they
no
framed you. They're trying
no
to frame you.
I think someone in the jail was responsible for it, but I don't think the feds were because they knew it wasn't me. They were just trying to figure out what was going on. But I was just thinking, could
That
you
didn't mean you
imagine
didn't have to stay in the hole.
Could you imagine if they did think it was me? I mean, could you imagine the headlines like J Sixer sends white powder to
That's
judges? I mean,
exactly what they
I would
wanted.
I
They
would
would
have
want
more
that.
indictments, and I would not never have seen the light of day again. I mean, that's terrorism kind of stuff. So someone was actually trying to do that.
Tell everybody a little bit about what you told me about the jailers and what the day to day was like in the gulag.
Yeah. So basically, um, almost all, and I can think of maybe one that wasn't, what they were African nationals. And so, if you've ever spoken to someone from Africa, their language is very, very harsh. It's hard to understand. And then it was COVID at the same time, so they have masks on. And therefore, you can't hear what they're saying in the first place. And you don't bother asking them to repeat themselves because they're not going to do it. They're going to tell you one time and that's it. And then they're going to yell at you. You know what I mean? So they know that they don't have to repeat themselves. So you just kind of have to figure it out. So it was really difficult that way. But they were also specifically, some of the management of the jail there had already been outed as having very public statements like FJ Sixers, F Trump, all this kind of stuff. Yet they were the ones that were overseeing us in this particular wing of the jail. And then they had these people who weren't even Americans because they're not, who were in charge of everything we did every single day, whether they let us out for 1 hour that day or they didn't let us out for that day. It was all arbitrary, whatever they wanted. There was never anything consistent that happened, which is what you learn at every other place, that there's consistency. You know exactly, everybody knows what's going to happen. It's a lot like
Everybody knows what the routine is.
yeah, everybody knows what the routine is. So you know this, that, this, that, this, that, but we could never count on that. That was all part of the punishment too.
That's part of the psychological warfare.
Yeah. And another thing that they wouldn't do is they would not let us go to the barber. So I have a picture of me, and I'll see if I can find it, and I'll show you what I looked like when I left there. I had a full on beard, long hair. They wanted us to look like terrorists. They wouldn't allow us to go shave, but everybody else in the jail got to go and use the barber. They wouldn't let us do it. They wouldn't let us have any in-person visits. So during that time, no one got visits. You could not come in person, and they didn't have video visits there in our part, but they had instituted them in another part where they had video visits.
This is so criminal.
Yeah.
I hope these people have got to be held accountable. You've got that something's got to happen. Trump, they've got to hold these people accountable. And
Yeah. If
want
there's
them.
no accountability,
I
it's
want
going to
public
continue.
trials and I want executions for treason because that's what this is.
Right. There has to be accountability, and that's why I say Pam Bondi, whatever. But if I don't see indictments and perp walks, then none of it matters. None of it matters.
as you know, in his first term, he had a lot of sketchy people that ended up having to leave because they were exposed as being sketchy people. So
Hmm.
we'll see what we'll see. It's just like in the book of Matthew that you'll know them by their fruits. You'll know them by their actions.
Right.
That's what I judge everybody. I judge other podcasters by it, information that I get, and then I see if somebody else has something similar because there's a lot of people out there trying to just make a name for themselves and like in podcasts and things like that. I never made any money at it, but I have an insatiable desire for the truth. So that's why I'm so glad that you, Jeff Brown, J6POW, did you notice the prisoner of war flag's been flying over
Yeah. So
Capitol building
just
that day?
yeah. So what I say is I don't consider myself a prisoner of war. I consider myself a political prisoner because
Ah,
if you're a prisoner of war over there, you had it rough. Now at the end of the day, we still got 3 meals a day most of the time. At the end of the day, we still had access to a shower at least once every few days. So there was things that a prisoner of war go through that I'm certain that we didn't have to deal with. So I'll take political prisoner, but
well, it'd be interesting to compare
yeah,
your experience with what's required under the Geneva Convention for
right.
prisoners of war. But um, we are in a war against evil, corrupt, Satan worshiping pieces of
Mhm.
excrement, um, and and you were caught in the crosshairs, and I could have been, but I would have
Yeah, that's I hear that a lot. There's
biggest stink in the world because I already had it. I already had my video out there. I had
hmm
the video out there within hours of the thing happening. So you want to tell me that I did anything wrong when you don't have me anywhere closer than a little bit of the grass in front of the Capitol building? Yeah. And when I've got video of you shooting tear gas on peaceful protesters, yeah, you come on, bring it to me, baby, bring it to me. I mean, I just and then apparently they arrested grandparents and stuff like that. But anyway, I
yeah,
digress again. So
yeah. No, there's so much video of people doing peaceful things all over the place, including inside the Capitol. And it's just when they decided to not quit attacking us, that that was it. Enough.
and yeah, and that's why they're trying to silence us. They're trying to
Hmm.
silence us because there were
Yeah.
millions of people there. They were trying to
Hmm.
silence us because they wanted to get rid of Trump and they wanted to continue with their crookedness. We have been living under a giant organized crime syndicate. It's because you think about it, I have a friend who worked for a or worked for, I'm just going to say it, it's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. And she
Hmm.
was supposed, it's in the 80s. She's supposed to enter, document different events that go on with alcohol, in her city. She's in the military at the time. She's seen on the news that this person got their car. They went out, started their car, and their car blew up. And this person, there was like a series of car bombings. And
Hmm.
she's typing this stuff and she sees that it's the people in the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms that are actually blowing up the cars. So what do you think? Let's just stop and taking the idea that our government's actually working for us when they're not.
Right.
And see, you want that agency to stay in existence. So you want the problem that that agency monitors to continue to be a problem, even if
Okay.
you have to make the problem artificially in order to keep your job.
Well, and that's what they did with us too, because what they did is they opened up another individual case for each and every one of us. So what it made it look like is that there was more domestic terrorism around the country. So when they could show their charts of domestic terrorists, they could outline it that way. These are the number of cases. That's why they kept saying the cases are increasing. Well, it is because they're taking each and every one of us and making an individual thing. So that was to
I
cook
would
the
have thought that
numbers.
would have been the case from the beginning, that each one of you would be considered separately. But it wasn't.
Yeah, but it's
Like
still
you
it's
were a
still
group.
it's still it's still one overall investigation. It's January 6th investigation.
Oh, I
They
see.
made each one of our things a special independent investigation underneath the FBI.
That FBI.
Hmm.
I mean, like my friend, he's definitely, he was there with him for a long time, and he's definitely honest, and I don't think he is a problem. He was shocked when I showed him the video of all the what it looked like all the FBI agents pretending to be MAGA in the crowd with their masks on and stuff.
Hmm.
So okay, so back to that. So the food, they did feed you every day. They wouldn't let you see the barber. The water what's the deal with the water?
Yeah, so I mean, the pipes. I mean, most of the jails are old, so they got old style pipes in them. There, old style sinks and old style toilets. So it's just a matter of just old plumbing. So you're getting water that's really terrible. I mean, we tried to use a filter. They had one drinking fountain in there that supposedly had a filter on it. That a lot of people thought there was a filter on it, whether there was or not, we never knew. But we always kind of drank out of that one, whenever possible. You'd fill your water bottle, and fill your water bottle out. You could very well do it on your sink. It's probably the same dang water, but I don't know. It might have been a psychological thing, I guess.
Psychosomatic. Now, did you have a roommate?
Not in DC. So in DC, we were all celled individually. We each
Okay.
had our own cell. So when it was 20, when they were the 23 in 1 days, you were in your cell 23 hours, isolated, just you.
You have books or anything to entertain yourself during the
Yeah,
day?
yeah. So you have people send in books to you. Yeah. Hmm.
But you couldn't have your phone to play
No,
online games
no,
like that.
no.
Nothing,
So, well,
nothing
some,
electronic.
depending on which place you were at, sometimes they would have a tablet. So they had a tablet where you could play games if you wanted, but it's like astronomical pricing. And then there was some that had apps on it. Some of them were meant for entertainment, and some were meant for education. But not every place had those. But DC did have that.
Did have that?
Hmm.
So you could get a tablet and kind of
Yeah,
entertain.
yeah. Yeah, but the pricing is crazy. I mean, when you add up your phone calls and you add up your commissary, because the food that they bring you, it might keep you alive maybe, but it's certainly not going to get you the nutrition you need. So you always have to supplement with the commissary, and mostly protein, like a lot of us would do protein extras. You add in the commissary, you add in the telephone calls. You needed to get shoes, for example, those kind of things. You add it up, and you're spending still phone calls, the other one, you're still spending like anywhere from, on the conservative side, from like $300 to $600 a month just inside, and you basically have nothing to show for it. You know what I mean? So it still costs, even though it's technically free to be there. I mean, if you had to survive, you didn't spend any money, you couldn't make phone calls. They give you one free 5-minute phone call a week, so you could get that, and you couldn't get any supplementals as far as your commissary. I mean, it's pretty bad. And fortunately, I'll say this, is that there were people who, from all around the country, in fact, we got cards and letters. Like, we broke the mail system at DC, which is great.
Oh, that's
Because
great.
normally what has to happen when you get mail is they have to photocopy it, and then they give you the photocopies, because they don't give you the actual mail, because there could be drugs laced in it somewhere, right? So you don't get your real mail. But so much mail was coming in that they just stopped it, and they knew that no one in our unit was using drugs, so they didn't worry about that. So they just let all the mail come right through. Eventually, because they couldn't handle it, it broke it.
Praise the Lord. That's good.
Hmm.
The patriots will
So
appreciate
we,
that. Marjorie
oh,
Taylor
Margaret Taylor
Greene.
Greene, yeah, she was there. Yeah, I was there when she was there. Mhm.
Okay, so
Louis
did
Gomer and
in
her.
the jail know that she came there and they wouldn't let her in?
Yeah, it took her all months to be able to finally get in, and then when it happened, they called her and said, "You got like 30 minutes to get here," and she was over at the Capitol, and so, because she'd been trying for months to get in, she'd show up and they'd not let her in, not let her in. Finally, they said,
Yeah,
"Okay,
because
well, we're
I
going to show
saw a
you."
video where she tried to get in and they
Yeah,
weren't allowing her in.
yeah, but they go, "You got to be here in 30 minutes." So she made it, and Louis Gomer made it, and then they were walking through the whole jail, and the person who was giving the tour was just getting ready to end the tour, and they go, "Okay, well, the tour is over." And she goes, "Wait a minute, we didn't even go see where the J6 people were," and they weren't even going to let them do it. So they actually had to. Her and Louis Gomer said that they were not going to leave until they were escorted into us. And so it took some negotiating. The warden had to get involved, all this kind of stuff, and then finally they let him in to see us, and they were in there for almost a good 2 hours. It was pretty cool.
Oh, wow. Did you get to talk to her?
Oh yeah, of course. Hmm.
How many of you were in there when that happened? Would you say? If you
So there was probably, I don't know, about 30, low 30s.
Oh,
In
really?
fact, yeah. In fact, when you see, she did a report called, oh, what's the name of that report? I can't remember. She did a report with Louis Gohmert called, uh, "Babe, you want to?" Anyway, but there's a cover picture on it, and it's of us standing in orange jumps, in orange clothes,
With all your
during
beards and long
on the
hair?
cover. Yeah, well, you can't. Yeah, you only see a profile view though. She took that picture when she was there. Mhm.
Unbelievable. So, okay, so back to they think somebody's trying to frame you for sending white powder to a judge. You get
Right.
in the hole for how many days?
I was a week down there, and
Week,
it did
7
not.
days.
Yeah, yeah,
What do they
didn't
have in the
know.
hole? What's the hole look like?
So it's a cell that's about, I would say, 6 feet by 10 feet, 6.5 feet by 10 feet, and it had a they there was a concrete ledge that they had this horrible mattress. I mean, in jail and prison, mattresses suck. They're just terrible. It's like sleep. You might as well be sleeping on the concrete, whatever, or the metal, which is most bombs. But this was concrete. Yes, it has a sink and a toilet, and then the only time that you get out for 1 hour, and you have to be cuffed. And they walk you over, and they put you in the shower, and then they cuff you, and they cuff you to walk over the shower. Then they uncuff you so you can shower, and then they cuff you so you can walk back, and that's all you get to do. And they do that every two.
You're just treated like an animal.
Yeah, it's
Just
it.
treated like an
Yeah,
animal.
so that went on, and then I got pulled out and got asked those questions, and then I was sent to a place in Virginia, Central Virginia. I spent this time I was moved out to a private jail, and I spent
Like
about,
in Richmond, near Richmond, or near where?
it
Where
was called Central Virginia CVRJ, Central Virginia Regional Jail.
was that? A nice, like the one that they send, like white collar criminals to, or was it bad?
Well, no. So you're thinking of prison down the road. This is jail still. So this is all pretrial. So
Oh, yeah,
basically,
great.
everyone is mixed together in here. When you're in jail, just it's like you got all kinds.
So the gulag is a jail as well.
Correct. Yeah, it's
Okay.
a different. There's two wings. There's two wings to the DC jail.
They throw you all in the same one.
Correct. Yeah, in a pod in the same one. Yeah, where in the pod that we were in, there was 48 cells. So this is a dorm style setting. So I had been in a situation in DC where I had an individual cell, and the door was locked. This one was a dorm setting where it's like a barracks.
Okay.
You just have a bunch of
Have your
bunks.
bunk.
Yeah, I had a
You get a
bunk.
top bunk or bottom bunk?
Fortunately, I was able to get a bottom bunk, but a lot of times I had the top bunk, and the top bunk kind of sucks because it just does. Everyone wants a bottom bunk. So I had to go through the COVID protocol there, and then I ended up getting a job there, working in the kitchen for a little bit, which was fine. Kept the days going by a little bit easier. And then one day I got pulled from there and sent to another place in Rappahannock.
Where's that?
And that's also Virginia, Rappahannock, Virginia. I ended up spending, I think, another 3 months there.
Is
But
this a nicer one? Are any of these nicer than
this,
all nicer
this,
than the gulag? But what's
yeah. So this one was a little bit newer than DC. So DC's pretty old. These two were newer, so they were a little better.
but they're very similar. So you go to that one. How long are you at the second Virginia one?
For about 2 to 3 months. So during this process, though, since I left DC, basically what happened is in DC, we were given inside there. We were given a tablet so that we could review our discovery, because there's all these hours and hours of video, right? So we had access to that. We had access to that video. So, but the only place that we could do it, and other documents from our attorney that were online. DC is the only jail in the country at that point that had any internet connection for your inmates. When you're an inmate, you do not have an internet connection. Period. I mean, unless you're using a cell phone, which if you get caught, that's another story. But you don't have internet connection. But we had to have internet connection, so they made an exception, and they allowed us to have internet in there so that they could keep us there essentially.
How many people went with you to the first and second Virginia place that were Jason?
Just me.
But then you said
Yeah.
we, so it sounded like
Well, now I'm talking back when we were in DC.
Oh,
I
okay.
jumped back. So back in DC, when we were there at the time, because I was there at that time, we had a tablet, or it was a little laptop where we could browse through all the discovery stuff. Okay, because it was on a website called evidence.com, so we could go to that website only. But once I left DC and went to Central Virginia and went to Rappahannock, I could not get on the internet to access my discovery. So because I had co-defendants that were still in DC, they were able to access their discovery and I was not. So my lawyer made a motion that said, hey, my client can't access his discovery. What are you going to do? I mean, he's got co-defendants that are accessing it. He can't. So they had one or two choices.
Protection under the law.
Yeah. So they had two choices. They could either, one, send me back to DC, or two, send me home to use the internet here. And so since they weren't going to send me back to DC because of that incident, they had to send me home. So after 11 months, and it was on July 20th of 22, I was released to come home to prepare for trial. So then I flew back across country, and when I went to the airport, the only thing I had for identification was a photo ID of my booking sheet in the last jail that I was at. So it took a long time to get on the flight, to say nonetheless. And then, of course,
they didn't transport you in a Con Air flight?
No. The judge released me from Rappahannock, Virginia. My girlfriend had just happened to be on a business trip in South Carolina or North Carolina, one of the two, and was told that she could come and pick me up. So she rented a car and drove up to there, and then we both got on a plane and flew back home.
So you get home. And now you have total freedom. You can surf any website you want to while you're home.
No, absolutely not. I could only go to the evidence.com. I was not allowed to use the internet for anything, and I was.
How would they know?
Because they
check
can
your
watch
history on your computer,
watch your internet traffic. Yeah, watch the traffic, and I know that they do it because one of us J6ers got arrested and then released and was told not to use the internet, but he did use the internet at home to watch Mike Lindell's cyber symposium.
And that's while the one I was at where I met Bannon.
Okay.
Spoke at that and told people some stuff.
So he and while he was listening to it, they came and rearrested him. So I knew that they were doing that. So I was not going to have that happen to me. So I played it totally straight, prepared for trial, and then I tried several motions, of course. I wanted to get separated from my co-defendants because I never knew them before, was locked up with them. They assigned them to me. And then we tried to get a change of venue, of course, denied. We tried to get a delay because right when my jury selection was to start was 2 days before the 22 midterms. So you can imagine, how much everything was going on. And not only that, all the J6 committee meetings programs were going on. So it's all being televised, everything about us, and they wouldn't let us do any of it. They wouldn't let us delay. They wouldn't let us change venue. None of that stuff. Again, so we're totally denied all these things. So anyway, so none of that occurred, and then finally jury selection was set for Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So basically, I had to fly across the country to go do jury selection before Thanksgiving, and then there was a recess in the court from that time until the following weekend. So I had to spend like 6 days in DC, locked into a hotel room there that I couldn't leave because I was on an ankle monitor like that, just because the judge didn't want to delay the trial that extra 5 days. It let me stay home during Thanksgiving holiday and start the trial the following week. He had to start it the day and a half before, so we had to fly all the way across the country 2 days before Thanksgiving.
And now this is how long after you got arrested? How many months are we into this?
So this is a year and 3-4 months, about 14 months.
Isn't there something in the Constitution that says that you're supposed to have a right to speedy trial?
Yeah. So basically, what would happen is they offered us speedy trials, but I didn't want to go through a speedy trial. I wanted to slow the bus down because I wanted to see what was going to happen, in this whole process. So yeah, so technically, if I had called for a speedy trial, they could have done it. But regardless of it wouldn't have mattered now that I realized,
The fix was
in
in.
retrospect. But yeah, we could have done it. But no, we they would say, hey, you want to do this, and like, no, we're fine, pushing it back. So that was all part of what was going on. But I wanted to slow the bus down because I wanted to see what was gonna happen with everything that happened after Biden was placed in office, and what things were going to transpire, and let things cool down as much as possible.
Wow. So if you had a speedy trial, you would have also still gotten a jury trial, right?
Yeah, of
Or
course.
were they
Yeah.
trying to do a stipulated agreement where you settle and take a plea deal?
Yeah, well, they wanted to. I mean, the feds want to plea out. That's how they get
That's
their
how all lawyers
rate.
want.
Yeah, I don't even know how many trials there were. I mean, I was one of them. I was probably like, I want to say, I was probably about maybe the fourth or fifth one to go through. So there had been a few ahead of me, but not
Wow. How many people were co-defendants with you?
many. I had two other co-defendants.
From what states?
One of them was from Tennessee, and the other one I want to say was from Pennsylvania, I think. During jury selection, let me tell you about that. Jury selection was, so basically there's a 70-person pool that they pull from. They get notified to show for jury selection on that day, and you wonder who they sent those notices out to. It certainly couldn't have been Democrats, right?
Oh
But
no, they're all Democrats.
yeah. So and then the judge sits before them and asks them a bunch of questions and to write down their answers, and usually in yes or no format kind of thing. And then if then they take all those papers in, and then they look at them, and if there's some that it has a question, like it should, we were looking for a yes answer. This answer should have been yes, but they said no. They would ask that person, do you what is it that you think you have a problem with, yada yada yada. So they try and whittle down, and then at the end of the day, you end up with 12 with a couple of
Alternates.
standards alternates. Yeah, your side has a certain amount that they can whittle out without having any explanation, and then you have a couple that you have to contest back and forth. Well, during this process, we found out that I didn't know, my attorney probably did, but the lawyers can be on the jury in DC. How crazy is that? Who is going to take over the jury room as soon as they go back in deliberations? A lawyer who's going to push their agenda. That's terrible. They allow reporters. There was reporters from CNN that was there. I had one, no kidding, used to be Jamie Raskin's babysitter for his kids, was on the jury. Okay, no kidding. There were people that, when they tried to object, they were saying that they were so traumatized that they actually cried on the stand, that they could not. January 6th was the worst thing that they'd ever experienced, and they were never even there. They just saw it on the TV. So when it came down to my 12,
Chris, you watched a produced show that wasn't even close to reality, and that was so traumatizing. Oh,
when it came down to my 12, there was not one that I thought, okay, I got a chance. So I knew I was cooked at that point. And then going through the trial was very perfunctory. It was just, straightforward. There was myself, my two co-defendants. Each of us had our own lawyer, and it was one jury. And in that process, we each presented our cases in order, but we were sitting at our tables, and our tables faced the jury pool. So the jury was looking straight at us, essentially, across. And then the judge was over to the left-hand side for us. It's COVID. He's making us wear masks, so it's kind of like this the whole time.
So
in
you
court.
look like a bandit the whole time.
Okay, and that's exactly what happened. One of the jurors, we found out, was in the jury room talking to the other jurors about how one of my co-defendants is giving her the death stare. She's talking about this. And so finally someone says something, and then the judge dismisses the jury, and they brings her back in and starts talking. It's like, yeah, he's giving me the death stare. He can't help it because he's right across from her, He's got a mask on. I mean, he's a big dude. He's got a big bald head, and he does have big blue eyes, but they're not death stare. And so he asks her, well, do you think you can continue on? And she says, yeah. And so he lets her stay. And then eventually she comes back again with the same issue, and he finally dismisses her after she's been talking to the people in the jury room and making all these comments about him, and then just inserts an alternate and continues the trial. That absolutely was a mistrial right there. You know what I mean? So stuff like that happened. The person that ended up being the jury foreman, kid you not, was a person who was sitting front row center, but slept through at least 60% of the whole trial. And the trial was seven or 8 days long. He literally was like this. I mean, you could, if there was one person who said, "There's no way that guy would be the jury foreman."
Kangaroo court.
Totally. And I had no witnesses and no victims that I could question. They had cops there that came up and gave testimony about what it was like to get pepper sprayed, but pepper spray was flying everywhere. So I had no witness that said they saw me. In fact, none of us, my two co-defendants either, not one cop that testified said they recognized us or knew us. So we had no witnesses or victims to question.
You have a right to face your accusers.
Yes, exactly. Face and question, exactly. And then the discussion about pepper spray was big because we all got enhancements for that. Pepper spray is a deadly weapon. They tell us how, well, they've been sprayed with pepper spray during training. It's what they're required to do, but yet here it is, some sort of deadly weapon. So it was.
They were alleging that you were spraying pepper spray.
Right, exactly.
No evidence whatsoever, no pictures, no video.
They have video of me. They don't have video of me discharging it. So basically what happened is there was bags of pepper spray there that were set around. And the reason I have co-defendants.
Like they do with bricks in these exactly. George Soros riots. They set up piles of bricks for the rioters that he.
One of my co-defendants handed me a can. I didn't know what to do with it, handed it back. And then another one handed it to me. Now, because I'm 6'5" and tall, all of it's caught on camera right there. So they got facial recognition on me. I was wearing a hat that was one of a kind because I wasn't thinking about being identified, but I'm tall and they had pictures of me all around the Capitol, so they were able to identify.
Oh no, that's probably a big reason why you got caught.
It is.
Yeah.
It was those Fargo hats where it's got the little wool piece and then the wool on the ears.
Yeah.
Goofy. I had that with a big Oakley logo right in the middle. So it was a one of a kind hat. So it was just it's super obvious. But anyway, so we go through the trial and comes time for deliberation. It is 1 hour that they deliberated on. Between the three of us, we had 27 charges. They did them all in 1 hour.
Guilty.
Yeah.
And how quickly can we say guilty? I want out of here. I'm tired of this whole jury thing.
It is a surreal feeling because you've seen it in movies. The jury foreman stands up and the judge asks them. It's like, and there it is happening in real life for you right in front of you. It's a trip. It is. And then it was click, click. I was gone out the back door. I spent another month. No, almost. No. Oh no, that's right. I went to Northern Neck, Virginia first, and I spent.
You were earlier.
No, this is different. So I went to
Northern Neck. 3 places in Virginia.
Yeah. Ultimately, I made 11 stops at different places at the end of the day. So I went to Northern Neck, Virginia. I spent about 3 months there, and that was an old place. And there was people who would come out and in the DC jail too. There was a place called Freedom Corner where all of our supporters could hang out. We kind of see them out of the corner of one of the jail windows for a little bit. Mm-hmm. There were those kind of supporters too in Northern Neck, and this was a private jail. It was a little bit of a distraction to the prison, so they wanted to get us. When I got there was like about 9 J6ers there, but they ended up getting rid of all of us because they didn't like the people who were out there.
Were they singing or praying or anything?
All the above, yeah, and then calling out the jail too, because they were doing some pretty not cool stuff there too. The jail,
What were they doing bad there?
Well, it dealt with the food and the treatment of us in particular
Not
that
letting you go to see the barber and stuff too?
yeah, exactly.
How often did you get to shower? Was anything weird with
No, this was dorm
ever
style. And
do?
you had a shower. You could shower, as many times as you want in this particular place because it was a dorm style. So then I'm there for about 3 months, and then I get pulled out, and it was sentencing time. I was going for sentencing, and so I went to the DC jail and got sentenced. No, hold on, this yard. I did leave Northern Neck for sentencing, but it was a month before sentencing, so they sent me to the DC gulag. So I went to the gulag, and then it was there that I got sentenced, and then I was there for another month thereabout, and then I left there for to make my way back home. So I had been sentenced, and I requested that I go to Lompoc, which is in California here. So a month after I got sentenced, I went through Oklahoma, where I'd gone through on the way out there. So I got on Con Air and
Went back to Grady again?
no, I didn't go to Grady. This time I stayed on the airport. It was at the transfer point. I stayed there for like about a week, and then I got flown out to California and went to Victorville, California. And I was up in Victorville, which is a holdover to where I was eventually going to end up as Lompoc. So I was in Victorville for about 3 months, and then I ended up in Lompoc, where I spent the last 18 months. So ultimately, I was locked up for 36 months. I was on home arrest for 4 months, and then I was at the halfway house for 20 days before Trump pardoned me. I went to the halfway house at January 2nd this year. I was at the halfway house. I got to walk out of the halfway house. Pardon us on Inauguration Day, on the evening of the inauguration. Well, so basically what happened is we were waiting all day. It's like, okay, there was a desk at this one place. We thought, okay, he's going to go there and he's going to sign it there. Or then he's going to go to this place and then he's going to sign it there. Then he's going to go. So ultimately, he ended up doing it out at the Oval Office, which was later on. It was like 4:30 our time, whatever. And at a halfway house, basically, it's you have to check in and check out. So you're there to integrate back into society, right? So those guys who've been in prison for 20 years, who they go to a halfway house before they get released out to the street. There's not guards there, so they're basically young kids running the place essentially, and they're door monitors. They make sure you sign out, ask you where you're going, and then they sign you back in when you get back. And so I go down there and I say, "Hey, I just been pardoned," and they're like, "We don't know anything. We don't know anything," because they don't. And the irony of it too, I guess, is that it was on Martin Luther King Day, so it was a federal holiday. So guess what? You know what I mean? It's like they got the perfect alibi to not know anything. And so there was some phone calls back and forth that they did, because the halfway house is private. It's not run by the feds. It's contracted to the feds, contract to them. So there was some back and forth, and they said, "Well, we're not going to let you can't go until we get something from the BOP, which is the Bureau of Prison." And so, being a holiday, I knew that wasn't going to come down. One of the groups had an attorney show up on my behalf outside the halfway house and tried to talk to these kids, and the same thing. It's like, we don't know anything unless we hear something from the Bureau of Prisons. We're not going to let them go. The other thing is, I could literally just walk out the door if I wanted. It's just a push gate. I could walk out. It's not locked, right? But at that point, I become an escapee. So then what they would do is they would call the marshals.
Then they'd have an excuse to lock you up again.
Right. So
But you don't want to mess with that.
So what I do, I called the marshals and I said, "Hey, look, I've just been pardoned. I'm supposed to be released. If I leave here, they're going to say I'm escaping, and they're going to call you. Are you going to come after me?" And the guy on the other end of the phone, he says, "Look, I know what's going on. I can't give you any advice, but it is what it is." So he basically wasn't telling me I could go, but he wasn't necessarily telling me he wasn't going to come look for me either. So he's just kind of leaving it neutral. So then I thought to myself, look, I could walk right out the door. My girlfriend was there a little bit earlier. I could just jump in the car and take off. Why not? And I thought, well, it's so close. I've been through so much. There's just like, maybe I'll give them one more night. I thought, okay, just to play safe. But in my mind, The following day by noon, had nothing happened, I would have walked out at noon the next day. That was my thing. So I'll give them until noon tomorrow to get it worked out. But if they don't get it worked out by then, he already pardoned me. I'm done. I'm still leaving. So I talked to my girlfriend. And we said, hey, let's just give him one more night. It's just not worth this. We resolved that I was going to do that. And then I went back into and laid down on my bunk. And then like about an hour and a half later, they came in and said, pack your stuff. You're out of here. So at 9:20 that night, I walked out of the halfway house.
I have one more question, then I'm gonna let you go. When you went back to the gulag, had the population of J6ers increased, or was it
Yes. Yeah.
about
It
how many were
increased
there
and
then
changed.
compared to now?
Yes, that was the turnstile that they used with all of us. Like everyone went through that place. So there were guys who had been arrested, had also been convicted but not yet sentenced, and there was guys in there still who had not even gone to court yet. So it ran the whole gamut. I mean, it was crazy. The different kind of people. Everyone was in different spots during that time when I went back there. Yeah, it's crazy. There were
But
some
how
guys who
many people were
never
there
saw
first?
there were some guys who never got to court, and they were there the whole time.
No, until Trump pardoned them?
Yes,
Why?
some of them, most of them, for legal maneuvering.
Their attorneys thought it was a good legal maneuver?
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Oh my gosh. So the number of people when you first went in there, how many J6ers would you
There
get?
was there were when I first got there. Like I say, I want to say number 22 or 23, and then when I went back there, all the cells were filled. So there was 48, roughly 48, 40, yeah, 48, 46.
Do you talk to anybody when you went back the second time who traveled around to different jails and stuff like you had?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. With the exception of Santa Ana, I eventually met another J6er at most of the places I went. So when I went to Grady, that's where I first hooked up with them, and then of course DC, and then all the other places. In Rappahannock, I think I was the only one, but no, Enrique Tario was there. So yeah, in fact, yeah, I talked to Enrique when I was there.
What about the female J6ers? Did you ever know or hear about any of them?
No, most of the females didn't get locked up. In fact, I can't think of one that did. At least on Gulag side, there
They
was
locked up a
there
grandmother.
was no females in DC at all because they had us and
Did
that was
they
it.
have to be in the same jail with you?
They
Oh,
can't be in the same pod with us. They can be in the same jail at different places, but they can't. They don't house together.
so could there have been females there that you just didn't see them because you?
No, because everyone knew who was in DC. Everyone on the outside knew who was in DC, and there was no female.
Oh,
Yeah, it
well,
was
that's good.
all in that
That's good to know. That
way. Mhm.
probably saved me too on my gender.
Plenty of women got indicted. Some of them served time, but if they did, it was in a female jail outside of DC somewhere.
Oh, interesting, interesting. What a nightmare. We all thought we were doing the right thing, and we did do the
Yeah.
right thing. There were millions of people there. There were people, Doris, traveling back across the country, back to Kansas from DC. It was hard for us to find bus stops to stop and breaks because there were so many buses that were going to the demonstration of support for President Trump, with the stolen election and coming home. But we came at separate times on the way out, so it wasn't as bad. But on the way back, everybody was leaving at the same time. So it was kind of tough for the bus driver. But anyway, thank you so much, Jeff Brown. We will have to talk again. Your
Hmm.
story is important and people need to know it. So please, if you could you please share this? My videos on Rumble are incredibly censored, have been for
Hmm.
years. I do have one that had 100,000 views on it. One's with Derek Johnson, deciphering the executive orders and the military laws to tell you
Hmm.
all the things that are really going on that you can't see that are not part of the optics. But it's all very important. You need to be informed and you need to keep searching for information. Don't just stick with one person. I just want to end in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for delivering Jeff, even though he was forced to go through such a terrible ordeal. And we want to support all the people that were punished and wrongly and incarcerated and trafficked through this evil system. Vengeance is yours, as you know. Your will be done. But righteousness and good and those who love you and more people, which is we want everyone to go and no one to be sent to the wrong place with the enemy, Lord. We want salvation for everybody, and we thank you for this. We ask you to forgive us for all the things that we do that are displeasing to you. So we pray in your precious Son, Jesus' name. We give you all the praise and all the glory. Thank you. It was just a joy meeting you, and thanks you for sticking around. Okay?
Exactly. All right. Take care.
I've been sleeping well for the past 5 years due to MyPillow. So I strongly recommend MyPillows for you. Want a better night's sleep? Go to mypillow.com/accountability. Please help support my Accountability News Show and save money by using promo code Accountability. With a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee, there's no reason to wait. Go to mypillow.com/accountability or call 800-886-0309. That's 800-886-0309 so you can have a blessed night's restful sleep.